What is up? What is up? What is up, everybody? Let us fire it up. I'm going to get so owned in this game. It's time that we get to the Steam Top 50 and seeing what the latest trends are. Gary's mod. There's TF2. It's usually around somewhere. Oh, it's snakes. Does it just have really high retention? This genre is still viable. Or you just gotta shoot his butt. There was kind of a trend for a while. Like that is just the way things work. We did it! What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Clark Tank. We picked the right week to return to Clark Tanking. I guess the thing that happened most recently was last night, the Game Awards. Congrats to all of the winners, and there were so many indie winners, which is super cool. We could see, like, from the Game Developers Choice Awards last year and the last few years that more and more indies are winning, like, the main categories, which is super cool. But yeah, the main two things are the Epic Store and then Valve's change of their 30% cut. New revenue share tiers and other updates to the Steam distribution agreement. Basically, Valve said that for games that earn over 50 million, I believe, Valve's cut will be reduced to 20%. And if your game earns over 10 million, Valve's cut would be reduced to 25%. The other cool thing in this announcement is that indies are now allowed to, at least I think they're allowed now. They said that they were going to change it. I don't know if it was immediately changed, but indies are allowed to share their sales data, which is super cool, which could help us a lot on the Clark Tank. So that's good news. You know, in general, that change doesn't really harm indies because our cut is still the same. But a number of folks are upset because it seems kind of unfair or perhaps counterintuitive that the wealthiest folks would get the largest cut. But, you know, if you look at it from Valve's perspective, if you want to have games like Red Dead 2 and stuff like that stay on your store, you know, why would they do that rather than going, you know, like Fortnite is not on Steam. There's plenty of other large games these days that are not on Steam. And if they want the next GTA and stuff like that to be on Steam, then they need to be, you know, a bit more competitive. Yeah, there are some folks saying that you know, it seems a little unfair that especially those indies that are struggling to survive at all didn't get any benefit from this. And I can understand that sentiment. And, you know, Valve have been listening. A lot of indies have been talking to them. I've been talking to them, giving feedback and stuff. And I was hoping for something like on the first $100,000 that people earn, or maybe the first $250,000, that Valve's cut would be reduced there as well, because that would help, you know, indies who are starting out or indies whose games are not doing as well. It would help them to survive, basically. And I do think that that's in Valve's long-term interests as well, because you never know when the next hit indie game is going to come. But yeah, before Stardew was on Steam, how many of those Harvest Moon genre fans were on Steam? Maybe not that many of them. There were a lot of them on console and on, you know, handhelds and things like that. But it's possible that not a ton of them were on Steam. So I do think that Stardew, you know, certainly had a beneficial impact on Steam and on Valve. So yeah, I'm hoping that if they would consider, you know, making their cut smaller for, you know, the first 100,000 or the first 250,000 or something like that, then it would be more viable for indies to take risks and try more interesting and innovative things. And that would be good for Steam, and that would also be good for just PC gaming as a whole. Well, I've heard some people say that what if you had a system for, like, being able to opt in to the exposure? Because, you know, part of what Steam provides with that 30% cut is access to a huge audience. And, you know, I do think for Necrodancer and for a lot of games, they well earned that 30%. There's no way that Necrodancer would have done as well as it did if it weren't for Valve, you know, for Steam, you know, channeling eyeballs to the game because it was selling well. If we had been selling it on our own site, I think it still would have done all right, but I don't think that it would have sold, you know, 1 million plus units like it has. So, you know, I do think that for certain games that 30% cut is well earned, but there are plenty of games where people launch it and, you know, it gets its, you know, games get a small amount of guaranteed visibility at launch. And then after that, if it, you know, wasn't hitting the right metrics, then it doesn't get too much promo anymore. So it is kind of a bummer for those games to be paying the same 30% when basically Steam is acting for them more as a, a content management system and a credit card processor and things like that. So, it would be nice if maybe you could opt in, or maybe if the algorithm starts to actually favor you, then maybe it would go from a smaller cut to the 30%. Yeah, maybe it would be a thing that you could opt into. You could use you could use Steam as like a storefront that doesn't provide any visibility, and they just take a small cut. But I've heard counter arguments to that there's already stores doing that sort of thing. So yeah, I guess one other possible angle is that it could be that Valve detects if you are bringing visitors from external sources, like if you're doing your own advertising, or if you're getting a lot of traffic from press and things like that for your game, maybe it could detect the origin of that purchase and then use a lower cut if the source was external. Whereas if it was internal, if it was Steam driving eyeballs to your page, then yeah, they deserve a bigger cut of that because they gave, they sent their users to you. So anyway, there's different options, and I know I've been talking to Valve, and lots of other indies have been talking to Valve as well, and they're listening. And I think that's another thing that a lot of folks have been kind of upset at Valve saying that they don't care about indies, which I think is pretty fairly untrue. If you look at Valve's history, it's clear that they care about and pay attention to indies because Portal wouldn't have existed if they hadn't hired the Narbacular Drop team. I think that they do a lot. Also, if you follow some of them on Twitter, they tweet about the indie games that they're playing and enjoying and stuff. Like they obviously care. And also I kind of come from the old school where back in 2004 when I started the first indie company that I co-founded, there was no Steam. There was these casual portals that were just starting to come up, and they would take 70% and give you 30% rather than the other way around, or you could try selling from your own site. So, the current situation seems a lot better to me than that. I don't totally understand some of the vitriol that's directed towards Steam and Valve because, if you don't want to use their system, you don't have to use it. And now that the Epic Store is here, and there's more and more competing stores like the Discord store and Twitch has things, and of course Humble and GOG and consoles. The Switch is so viable now. I think it's good for indies in general. We've just got lots of choice. So anyway, that's my take on it in general. Let's see what you guys have been saying in chat while I've been blabbing on. Problem with it is many shovelware games on the platform right now. Well, that's another thing. I actually think that Greenlight and even Steam Direct were kind of showing that Valve was listening to indies because there were plenty of indies with good games that were not getting onto the store. So sure, there's a lot of stuff on the game that people would consider bad. But yeah, I don't know how you filter that stuff out because they were curating it manually before, and there were friends of mine, like personal friends of mine, that couldn't get on the store despite having great games. So that seemed bad too. So at least this way, I know it's not easy still to get noticed and kind of climb up above the noise of all those releases on Steam. But at least this way, it's kind of more... It's more in your hands. There's nobody stopping you. And if you generate your own hype and bring that to your game, then your game will rise above that noise, right? So I feel like this way is still better and fairer than the way that things were before. One thing that concerns me a bit about the Epic Store is that they are doing that system where the referrer, so basically a referral kind of system. So if somebody's streaming your game, they can put in their referral code, and then people who buy that game using that referral code will end up giving a cut to the content creator that was streaming it in the first place. So that's a nice way to be able to support content creators that you like. But my fear with that sort of thing is that we will have even more of a winner-takes-all type system where, the games that are selling well will be the ones that are streamed the most. So we will have fewer and fewer games being covered, because people will only want to play the ones that are selling well, because if they're selling well, then when their fans use their referral code, they're going to get a larger cut of that income. I think it's already a little bit difficult on Twitch to be a variety streamer. The streamers who just focus on one game, like Fortnite, tend to do a lot better. And that sort of behavior is not really great for indies. We would rather, that people play a lot of different games so that, when our game comes out, they would be more likely to give it a shot. But if everyone's playing Fortnite, or if everybody's just playing whatever indie game that recently came out that sells the best, then it's just going to it's just going to be more and more of a winner takes all system. So, I think gaming in general will be healthier if we have, breadth rather than, spikiness. But yeah, I do hope that I'm wrong about this Epic store possibly incentivizing, winner takes all sort of situations. I hope that that's not the case, because that's the main concern that I have about the Epic store right now. I do believe that it may be difficult to get on the store for some folks, which is another problem, like the gatekeeper sort of issue that we talked about with Valve previously. I don't think the store, hopefully they open it up fully eventually, but it seems like it's not, at least currently. But yeah, now this is the page for Hades on the new Epic store. I've heard that the users, the developers have a bit more control over the format and stuff of the store page. And supposedly developers are able to keep more of a direct relationship with their users. But I've heard that you get access to their email addresses and things like that, which is definitely another plus. That helps you to build, more long-term success as an indie without worrying that every time you launch a new game, if you don't, have a strong launch, you might not get favored by the algorithms, and then that's that. But if you can communicate directly with your fans and tell them, like, hey, we launched a new thing, then every successful game, you build up more and more of a snowball, right? So yeah, basically what this is Jake talked to a bunch of different indies and collected data on how many wish lists did they have before launch, and then how well did their week one launch go. And the interesting, kind of the conclusion here is at the bottom is like, how many sales did they get in their first week per wish list that they had prior to launch? And now, this is not to say that, for every wish list, you might get, one sale or two sales or something like that. It's not like your wish lists are directly converting into sales. It's more like the wish lists are kind of a measure of how hyped people on Steam are about your game and about your launch. And so the more wish lists you have, the more hype you can assume there will be. But also, of course, when you actually launch, people get a notification or an email that this game that was on their wish list has launched. And so what Jake did is he talked to a bunch of different indies and got data points on this, trying to figure out, okay, so say you've got 10,000 wish lists before launch, how many units can you expect to sell in your first week? And so the way to read this chart is, this is the number of sales you will get per wish list, and this is like the distribution of different games. And so you can see there's a lot of games that only got around 0.2. So if you had 1,000 wish lists at launch, then that would mean you would get 200 sales in your first week. Whereas a lot of games, well, not a lot, but some get more than one and even up close to two. But I think the average was around 0.5 or something like that. But you can see that quite a few were below 0.2. So anyway, this is part of a strategy that I think is something that most indies should try to do. Like as soon as you have something showable for your game, something that you think is hype enough that you could get people to start, wishlisting your game on Steam, I think you should put up a teaser trailer and start collecting wish lists, because that sort of thing gives you actionable information about how excited people are for your game. The most scary thing, and part of the reason why I do these Clark Tanks, and I've done a bunch of talks at MIGS and various other, and I did a talk in Toronto and doing more in the future. The reason why I do these things is to try to help people have a more realistic expectation for how their games might do, because sometimes people mortgage their homes to make a game and then it doesn't do too well. So I think it's wise to put up a Steam coming soon page as soon as you can and start collecting wish lists, because that will give you actionable information about how excited people are about your game, and you'll be able to project. You could say, okay, my wish list trajectory looks like this, and by the time I launch, in 6 months or a year or whatever, I can expect be somewhere in this ballpark of wish lists, and then you can use this. And if you want to be conservative, you should do something around like a 0.2, and that will help you to estimate what your sales are going to be in week one. And doing this is a little tricky because it means that the games that you make need to be games that could be trailerable. You could do a teaser trailer for them early on. So that at Brace Yourself Games, that's what we do. We don't make games if we can't think of a way to make a trailer for it early on, because if you can only make a trailer right at the end, it means you're going to be flying blind the entire time you're developing that game, and then you're going to launch it and just hope. So I think it's so much better if early on you can see how people are reacting to your game, and then scale up or down your development appropriately. So it's a way of mitigating risk. The other part of this that's important is the next page. So this is week one revenue versus year one revenue. So this one is, based on how well your game did in the first week, how well might it do in the first year? So again, Jake talked to a bunch of different indies, tried to figure out if you sold 1,000 units in week one, how many are you likely to sell for year one? And so the multiplier, like the lowest one, is 2. So if you sold 1,000 units in week one, then you might sell 2,000 to the rest of the year because you had like a really big spike and then it dropped off quite a bit. Whereas some games, on the other end, they would have 12 times. So if you sold 1,000 units in week one, you might have 12,000 by the end of the year. But yeah, again, the average is closer to here, like 4 or 5. But again, you should probably be conservative if you're trying to make estimates for what you should be doing. With your game and with your budget, you probably want to, use one of these much lower numbers because it could happen to you, right? So use one of the lower numbers for the wish list estimate. Use one of the lower numbers for your year one to week one to year one estimate, and that'll give you a ballpark for how you might do in your first year. So putting a trailer out itself is also another great way to get data about your game, because you can see how many YouTube views did I get on my trailer, and how does that compare to the YouTube views of other games in our genre. Did we get more than a game that sold well, or did we get less? So anyway, the more data that you have before launch, the more intelligent decisions you can make. So, and that brings me to this. So if you go to store.steampowered and then search and then filter by popular wish list. I didn't even know that this existed before. And what I would like to do on the Clark Tank in this stream and in the future is try to figure out exactly what's going on with this page, because if you look down here, hey, looky here, whose game is that? I have a small amount of data on this from other developers, and there was another developer who had a game that was below Industries of Titan, and then it surpassed it, and it surpassed it with fewer wish lists. So it would be useful if we could figure out how this thing works, because it would be nice if we knew, like, oh, anything above Industries of Titan, must have more than 100,000 wish lists or something. But that is not clear. But it may be skewed. That other person who had, more wish lists or a higher rating than us, but fewer wish lists, their game was launching sooner. So it's possible that time is a factor. So it could be based on number of wish lists, but also how close you are to your launch date. Yeah, well, I guess I mentioned briefly my theory on sequels, so that you guys can chew on it, and then maybe we'll talk about it when we play Lethal League in a future Clark Tank. But my theory is that you should think about what were the conditions that made the game successful, the first game successful, and are those conditions still the same? And I think for a lot of indie games, part of the reason why maybe sequels don't work so well for them, which might be the case for like Necrodancer or other games, is that a lot of the reason why the game is successful is because it's surprising. It's got a cool new hook, a cool new mechanic, and people really want to try it out. And Necrodancer was like that. Mount Your Friends may have been like that. And then once people have played that, the types of people who are into it, played it, they might feel like, okay, I got my fill of that, and they're a little bit less hype about it. Also, there are some games like fighting games, like Lethal League, where, you've played it and you feel like you kind of understand the experience already, and why do you need more of the same? But Lethal League managed to succeed, whereas Nidhogg 2 didn't do so well. The sequel didn't do so well, it seemed, based on Steam stats, compared to Nidhogg 1, which is unfortunate. Nidhogg is such a freaking awesome game. My kids and I play it a lot. But again, I think the conditions for the original Nidhogg were quite different. The original Nidhogg, it was like an indie darling. It was shown at a lot of shows before it was launched. And I remember, like, when I got to play it at like IndieCade or something like that, I'd been hearing about it from friends and other people in the indie sphere on Twitter for a long time, and I finally got to play it, and I had a lot of fun. So there was a ton of pent-up demand for that game when it came out. Whereas for the sequel, people already had played Nidhogg 1, right? So the conditions were a bit different. So that's why I am curious to play the new Lethal League and see what caused it to succeed. Now we should get to our actual homework, the real meat of the Clark Tank, where we talk about the Steam Top 50. Okay, so Stellaris, it's pretty crazy that their DLC hits #1. Came out December 6th, so yesterday, and hits #1. Looks like it's gonna slowly start declining here, and PUBG is climbing back up. But yeah, that's how big of a seller Stellaris is, that its DLCs alone, not even on sale, hit #1. So Artifact, it sounds like, I haven't tried it yet, but it sounds like you cannot grind to get cards. You have to just pay for everything, which is basically the way that Magic works. You can pay for cards with skill if you win enough. Oh, interesting. Okay, so you can kind of grind, but it's like by being good, which is cool. I like that. I think their concurrent user numbers were declining a bit, so it'll be interesting to see where it levels off and how they make changes to it to adapt and stuff. So Dota's up here. Warframe, man, we talked about this a lot on the Clark Tank before. It used to be so much further down. It's just been climbing and climbing, and they've made some great updates. World of Warships, so more free games in the top 10 than there used to be, which I think is a trend that we saw before, and it's to be expected. Okay, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is up here because it's on sale. It looks like Northgard, see, this is why this chart is so useful. It looks like Northgard maybe was on sale, and now it's not anymore, and so now it's declining. I saw someone say that Northgard maybe posted a DLC, so that could account for why it was in the charts. Mutant, Year Zero, Road to Eden, so we'll check out the trailer. So I think it's like a
Mr. More Than Human.
XCOM with mutants.
I'm Dux, and he's Borman.
I think you've mistaken me for someone.
And a bit more narrative. Gives a duck. I get it. So I guess XCOM likes are still viable, which is, hey, is good news for us. But we're making Phantom Brigade, which is, I wouldn't say it's XCOM like, but it's turn-based strategy with mechs. Some people started calling it Mexcom, which I think is pretty funny. Path of Exile. I don't think it used to be this high in the charts, did it? It's definitely come up. So another free game. Rocket League was always around somewhere. Far Cry is up here because it's on sale. No Man's Sky, they're still updating it and stuff. So props to them for that. Farming Simulator 19. So this came out. I wonder why it dips. So this may be one of those dips where it's just like certain parts of the world don't care, and then Germany wakes up and Germany's like, yeah, I want to simulate some farming. Stellaris itself, okay, so it's on sale when the DLC came out. X4 Foundations. This came out November 30th. I don't think I have heard about this. Let's check it out. What do you actually do, though? But what is gameplay? The whole series is pretty successful? Okay. Yeah, I did not realize it was a series, so... Again, a sequel, a successful sequel. Why? Why? We need to figure these things out. The spreadsheet games? Yeah, Steger, that's what I'm wondering. Like, what do you even do? Build space stations, set up trade routes, production chains, very deep game. Okay, sounds good. So, yeah, would have been my kind of game when I was younger and had more free time. Nowadays, I would be scared to start playing such a thing. I would never stop. But yeah, it looks awesome. And yeah, trailer long. Yeah, a game also seems to have a some certain part of the world likes it more than others. All right, Elder Scrolls Online Crown Packs. This used to be around in the charts for sure. So Kenshi, this is another new one. Let's check it out. Huh. Yeah, the graphics are not quite as good as some of the other games that we saw recently, but lose your squad? Why would you want to lose your squad? Or they mean lose Loose Your Squad? Yeah, they have a ton of reviews, so yeah, sometimes sometimes games have difficulty with their early access, like their final launch out of early access, and they have trouble getting in the charts, but looks like this one's doing all right. Here's NBA 2K19 up the charts despite the mostly negative reviews. It's crazy how that happens. What? Katamari Damacy Reroll? There's a new Katamari game? I did not know this. It's a remaster of the original. I will get it just to play the original again. Weird. Alright, Frostpunk. It's on sale. So, Stellaris. So this is like their other DLC, one of their more recent DLCs on sale. Soul Calibur. So yeah, it's already 30% off, even though it came out pretty recently. We've been playing this a little bit at the Brace Yourself Games office. GTA 5, you're still here, old friend. I was wondering if you would still be in the charts. There you are. And War Thunder climbing up. So yeah, the free-to-play game's doing a bit better than they used to on ye old Clark Tank. Football Manager 2019. So yeah, whenever they launch a new version of this, it gets in the charts. But look at this. There's a part of the world that just does not give an F. Unless something else happened, like a sale started and ended, but it sure seems like there's part of the world that's just like, maybe it's North America, it's just like football? You mean soccer? Yeah. So yeah, not too surprising to see Football Manager doing well. It usually does whenever they release a new version. Fallout 4 is up here just because it's on sale. Fallout 4 Automatron, so DLC. Maple Story, oh, that's on Steam now? So Maple Story 2. So this is one of Maple Story, the original, was one of the old, the OG free-to-play games. More Fallout stuff. Ring of Elysium. Why? Oh, so this is a free-to-play game. I wonder why its chart looks like this. Mortal Kombat 11. So this is pre-orders because it's not coming out until April. This is pretty impressive. It's doing pretty well for pre-orders that are, like 5 months in advance. Celeste is up here because it's on sale and because it crushed at the Game Awards. Congrats, my friends. Treasure Hunter Simulator. This is new. Came out yesterday. Okay, let's check this out. It's a metal detector simulator. Travel to historic locations and grab your metal detector. That's the player fantasy right there. This is a metal detector game. Holy smokes. Yes, I'm glad that you exist. Treasure Hunter Simulator. This chart by Harbor Pirate. Harbor, are you still in chat? Thank you so much for maintaining this. This is a 2-week moving average of number of games released on Steam. And then the red line is 2018. So, how much indie-pocalypse is there actually happening? This kind of helps us. This gives us, some data on it. This is the dip, like people don't want to launch before it because of summer sale. And then I guess this is the dip for winter sale. That's a good point. That definitely could be it. But yeah, you can see that we sort of leveled off and we're really no worse off than last year. So, the charts that were showing, like, everything's going up like this, and it's going to go up like this forever, and there will be, soon the surface of the earth will be covered in indie games. But again, I've said this a number of times, I don't feel like that's that big of a deal, because we were kind of always competing with those games. We were just competing with them to get onto Steam. So like with Greenlight, you were competing to get through Greenlight, and before Greenlight, you were competing just to get onto Steam at all. And, if those 10 extra games per day that are now on there, if they were really that amazing, then they probably would have been able to, make it onto Steam, and they would have been competing with us already. So I don't feel like, I know a lot of people complain about the flood and whatnot, but I really don't feel like it has that much of an effect. Those games could be there. They might have just been selling off Steam, right? And if they were that great, they would have made it onto Steam anyway, presumably. If anything, I think indies complain about the opposite, is that their new game isn't showing up, which is kind of what, when people say, oh, the Steam store is full of garbage, I don't want to see the garbage. Well, most of the games that are launched on Steam, they are not visible to most people unless you go digging for them. So I don't feel like it has that big of an effect. So we're gonna play some Hades. So I'm gonna fire that up. All right. So this is early access.
Of Hades, whose very name inspires fear and penitence, reminding us of the inevitable fate which we all share.
See you, Dad. Nice big dad face there. How you like my ranged attack?
with me.
Thanks, pal. Ooh. Skills. Titan Toppler, your dash is slightly slower but deals damage and can deflect. No, I want fast dash. I want to get in there and beat on them and then dash. Let's do this.
Thank you, goddess.
Alright. More jerks. Oh, they got projectiles, I forgot.
Be on your way indeed. What do I care?
Alright, Dad. I will. Fine! You can shoot this one from here. Ah! Nope, no, run! I thought it had a cooldown, but I guess if you just wait, you can just keep doing it. Oh man, we would have, if I'd realized this last time, we would have been so OP with the extra poison kind of damage we had. Maybe the Bloodshot has a golden whip. Oh man, I didn't even see that guy. Dang. I enjoyed it a lot. I think as a roguelite, it's very well made. I don't think the gameplay itself has any super hooky, innovative changes, but I don't think they necessarily need to. The one thing that's a shame is that we probably won't be able to learn too much from this game because we can't see how well it's selling on the Epic Store. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.